You're listening to the Practical Wealth Show with Curtis May.
Hey, everybody. This is Curtis May. Welcome to another episode of the Practical Wealth Show. So I'm really excited today. We have today's show, we're going to talk about self-directed IRAs. And so we're excited to have that discussion with Mr. Terry White. And so Terry is the president and CEO of SunWest Trust, where he lives out his passion for educating. So we already are kindred spirits right there, and inspiring potential investors to build their own self-directed IRAs that are customized to fit their unique financial goals. And so for over 35 years of experience in the real estate and investment world, Terry has seen it all, and he's here to share his experience to help guide you in your personal retirement planning journey. Terry, say hi to my listeners out there.
Hey, Curtis. How are you? How are your listeners? Thank you for letting me be on your show.
Yes, thanks for coming on. We're happy to have you and share. This is an important topic because I always tell people I think that your number one investment advisor is you, right? Because
absolutely,
you know what I mean? You worked hard for it, and I think giving it to some fund manager 1,000 miles away and hoping they care about it as much as you do is not good.
Crazy?
Crazy. I was going to say not good stewardship, but I like your word better, right? And so Terry, tell them what I didn't tell them about.
Well, you pretty much got it all. I've been in business for 30 years. I originally started with an escrow company. I'm here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which probably most of your listeners haven't even heard of and are not even sure if we're part of the United States, but let me assure you we are. So I started an escrow company, and then in 2004, I decided to start a trust company, which became SunWest Trust, and that's when we started offering self-directed IRAs. So just a quick little, trivial thing, Curtis, is that what people don't understand is that every IRA is self-directed, meaning that if you have an IRA with a brokerage house, you get to choose what stock to buy, what mutual fund to buy, that kind of thing. But my industry is one where we allow you to buy things that aren't offered or are not allowed by other banks and brokerage houses. So we let you invest in what we would call non-traditional type assets.
Mm-hmm. I like it.
And I think what's really important that you mentioned, and you said we were kindred spirits because of the education thing. And I agree with that 100%. And not only do people need to educate themselves so that maybe investing in stocks, bonds, mutual funds is not for them, they need to educate themselves about the things that they want to invest in. And that's really huge for us here at SunWest. We think it's extremely important for people to understand what they're investing in and not just jump into something because somebody's offering, 18% interest or something. Because those are the ones when you get into something and you don't really understand what it is or how it's going to pay you back. That's where, unfortunately, I see people lose money.
Absolutely. And so talk about that then. So in your goal to do that, what types of things do you do or facilitate to help clients not just fall for any charlatan out there if you truly do that? How do you help with that?
Well, of course, SunWest Trust acts as a custodian for your IRA, so you can make those kind of investments. And but it's important to us to know that the people that come to us and open an account know what they're investing in and understand exactly how let's just call it a self-directed IRA because that's what everybody terms it as.
Yep.
Know exactly how that works. Mm-hmm. And so if people are interested, they can go to YouTube and look up SunWest IRA. Mm-hmm. And I have over 230 videos there, just short 5 to 7 minute videos that talk about self-directed IRAs, things to watch for, things you can invest in, things you can't invest in. And one of the big things, probably, 10 or 15 of those videos are just about doing your due diligence to understand what you're investing in, what you want to invest in. I run across a lot of people, or a few people, I guess, not a lot, but a few that just get a phone call or they go to a meeting at a nice motel or something, and somebody touts this great new investment that, nobody's ever heard of before, and it's going to set the world on fire. And then they don't do any research on their own. They don't, it's as simple as Googling the person's name or the investment that they're talking about, and you can find out just a ton of information that way. So I encourage people to do that. And then also along the lines of education, I wrote a book that I called If All You Have Is a Hammer, and it's about self-directed IRAs. And the idea behind the title was just that a self-directed IRA is just another tool to use in your retirement planning. I don't know that it should necessarily be the only one, but again, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so you need to understand that there are other options out there that you can do with your retirement money.
Yes, that's awesome. Because that's kind of the goal of our show, is to say, look, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, right? And I always tell people there's more to the world than annuities or variable annuities, stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. And where people think that's where they're if they, let's say, have a 401k and they want to roll it over, right? Yeah. And so this is where, you can do. So let's talk about this, because you can do different things. So because a self-directed, or all of them are self-directed, but you can handle. And let's go from broad to down to a little more specific. But if a company has or let's say a business owner has a solo 401k, that you could be the custodian for, or Roth IRA, you could be the custodian for those type of entities. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Now, we, as far as solo 401ks are concerned, just for your listeners, that is a 401k that is for an individual that is in business that has no employees other than a spouse. Okay. So if you qualify for something like that, we can create it for you, and we can maintain the document. But we would allow, and we can be custodian if you want us to, but we allow you to be your own, the IRS and us will allow you to be your own custodian, your own trustee, so you can actually have a checkbook for the 401k and do your own investing directly in that situation.
Okay.
And people seem to, a lot of people that are not, I deal with this every day, so it's second nature to me, but they lump all retirement accounts together. So, and there are several kinds. You have a 401k if you work, you may have a 401k if you work for a big company.
Right.
And that 401k, you typically just have to invest in what the plan administrator allows you to invest in. So you don't have a ton of flexibility with that. But when you leave that company, if you ever leave that company, you can then do a direct rollover into a self-directed IRA and invest that money in several different ways. Right. You can also do a Roth. The majority of 401ks we talk about are what are called traditional. Just that's the Internal Revenue Service name for it, meaning that the money that goes into it is pre-tax money, and then you pay taxes on it when you take it out. And then they have a thing called a Roth that you put after-tax money into. And then once you've had it 5 years and you're 59 and a half, you can take the money out tax-free.
Now, here's a question I get. I know the answer, but I want you to tell them. Because people ask me, well, can I roll my 401k over into a Roth?
Well, yeah. The thing is, okay, because I just had this discussion with one of my employees. My company, SunWest Trust, has a 401k, and it's one of those big company 401ks where we offer several mutual funds, and you can invest in that. But every 401k, including a solo 401k, can have a Roth provision, a Roth component. So that's one way you can go from a 401k Roth. If you leave a company and you have a Roth portion of your 401k, you can roll that into a Roth IRA account. The other option is to roll your 401k into a traditional account. Then you can do what's called a conversion and convert it to a Roth. The kind of tricky thing there is when you convert from a traditional to a Roth, you have to pay taxes on the amount of money that you convert.
Right.
At the time you convert it. So, that might be that might be something that you would be interested in doing if you were looking at a potential investment that was going to hopefully have a lot of gains, because then you can get those gains inside a Roth IRA account, which makes them tax free.
Right. And so but you're going to pay taxes, either pay me now or pay me later. But a lot of times if it's bigger money, I won't do the conversion because they're not ready to take that taxable event at one time. So generally I'll roll over from a 401k. And it's amazing as you listen to this, guys, there are people that have, they've been gone from the job 5 years and they still have the money in the 401k and they haven't rolled it over. I mean, I have people like I'll do, I'm doing their analysis of their situation. They have like 2 of them, or 3, 2 from they've left job 2 times, 40,000 here, 25,000 there, 100,000, and then 2 things that drive me crazy is rolling the 401k into the new job 401k, which boggles my mind. It's like, why would you do that? It's like going from a frying pan to another frying pan, and or just leaving it sit where it is, and then when you need it, then if you try to get it directly from the 401k, then you got to take the 10% penalty and the 20% hit, and they'll just take it out. I was like, no, don't do that. You give away 30% of your money.
Yep,
right
exactly.
from the get-go. That's you got to think about this. Don't be so impatient.
But the thing is, Curtis, and that's why a podcast like yours are so valuable. And I just, the more people that you can get to listen to them, the better. Is people just don't know, and your plan administrator at the company you're with or you were with, if you've got $30,000 or $40,000 in there, they're not going to necessarily tell you, I have to be careful because I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but it's not in their best interest to explain to you all your options. So I'm excited about people like you that have these podcasts that are out there, at least explaining to people what the options could be, and then maybe, encouraging them to go out and do their own research and find out what they can do.
Right. A lot of times what we'll do is we will, talk to them about rolling it over, but I don't even have an agenda of what you should do with it, because I know it's going to take a month, 3 weeks to 3 months to get the money out, because the other people don't want to give out the money.
Potentially. And the other good point that you brought up is too, a lot of times we'll get calls from people who have heard something about a self-directed IRA. They heard they could do it, and then they call and want to start one. And then the next question is, well, what do I invest it in? And they have to understand that a custodian like myself, we can't tell you what to invest your money in, and we don't want to tell you what to invest it in. That's up to you. And that may be like, Curtis, maybe that's what you do, is you can help people figure out what's the best thing for them to invest in.
Yeah, I mean, basically that's what we do, part on that side of the fence, depending on what you qualify for, because it's like, okay, this is just the IRA is a holding tank, right? And so, there's 4 asset classes: business, real estate, paper, and commodities, right? So what is it, do you want income? Do you want growth? And so I think that, investing overall is a plan. It's not about products. You have to figure out what you need, and then what I call pick the clubs. And so the analogy is, I tell people, look, if you've got, when I do a workshop, I say, look, let's say I've got 2 things to give you. Let's say we're going to go play in the Masters. And I got 2 things to give you, but you can only have one. I could give you now since he won recently, I'll say Tiger. I could give you Tiger's clubs, and or I could touch you on the shoulder and give you his swing. Which one would you rather have?
I'd rather have the swing.
The swing, right? And so most people focus on the clubs. Most your products are just clubs, right? And I sell clubs, but it's really more important that we get your swing down first and figure out it's really more process over product. What are you trying to get accomplished? And then when you're ready, we'll take you down and fit you for some sticks, get you, and we'll pick the right club for the right scenario. I need cash flow. Okay, well, I need growth. All right, well, then they're different, and so we might break it, this is where you might diversify and, have some in a bridge loan. You might have some in life settlements. You could do, I've helped people do gold, and they wanted to own gold. And, so there's different stuff that you can do, but you need a good custodian that understands that stuff. But,
Yeah. The other thing, just real quick to point out for your listeners, Curtis, is, and you know this, but they may not, is that basically the IRS doesn't tell you what you cannot invest, what you can invest in. They tell you what you cannot invest in. And Section 4975 of the Internal Revenue Code just spells out that you cannot invest in life insurance or collectibles. So that leaves a huge
everything
else open.
Yeah, right.
And I think it's so important for people to, I love your analogy of the swing or the clubs, because you need to know what your goals are. They need to sit down and figure out, where they are today and where they want to be and what it's going to take to get them there, and do all that analysis before you ever jump into an investment. Because, and I'm sure you've seen this, you see people jump into things. An example in my business would be, you have somebody, say they're 69 years old and they go out and buy a house in their IRA. And the reason that's a problem is because that's kind of an illiquid investment. It takes a while to get that sold. Mm-hmm. And beginning 70 and a half, you have to start taking what are called required minimum distributions. Mm-hmm. So if you have this big asset in your account that's using all of your cash, and the IRS comes along and says you have to take these required minimum distributions now every year, you could put you in a position where you have to sell the house for a loss, or you have to do something. If you don't take the required minimum distributions, there's severe penalties. So you need to step back before you do anything and determine what the goals are, where you want to be, how long you have to get there. All those kinds of things have to be considered before you just jump into any kind of an investment, whether it be a self-directed IRA or your own personal investments.
Yes, I agree with that, because you could be in a situation where a lot of times for self-directors, you might use alternative investments, and let's say it's a self-directed IRA, and you've got 100,000, but an investment takes 100,000. Well, I probably wouldn't let you do that, because if it might be 6 years before you can get the money, and you'll have RMDs starting if you're 68 in 2 years, and you're in a liquid thing. So that's what I mean by the swing. You've got to know, or you and your advisor need to know where you're at and what you're trying to do, so you can pick the right clubs.
Yeah. And I'm not a golfer, so I may be wrong on this analogy, but depending upon the kind of swing you have, it's going to be a different kind of club. I mean, I know I shoot.
I'm not a golfer either. I was a basketball player in college, but I can't. I go to all these insurance conventions and they all talk about golf. So I was like, I can't figure out a good basketball analogy yet.
Well, I was just at lunch with some guys, and we were talking about shooting skeet, with a shotgun, and it's the same thing. I mean, different shotguns shoot different ways, and there are different ways to adjust them, and so. You just don't run out and buy a shotgun. You've got to be measured and fitted for it, and make sure that it's one that fits you, so that you can do the best, so that you can shoot as many skeet as possible. And so I just see that. That's what's so important to me as far as the education is concerned is, I would rather see people not open an account with me right now and spend a year or 6 months researching and trying to figure out where they are, where they want to be, and how they're going to get there before they jump in. And again, I love working with people like you that are the ones that are helping people come up with that information, because we don't get taught that in high school or college, really.
Absolutely not. Out of the 42 million in IRAs, how much would you say of that are self-directed?
Well, it's hard to tell, but the estimates are 3 to 5% of those are self-directed. And the problem with self-directed from the IRS's point of view is that they're hard to value. If you own Apple stock, you can on basically any minute go on a stock exchange and find out what that stock is worth.
Right.
But if you own you own a promissory note. If Curtis, I loaned you money and I have a promissory note in my IRA, that's something that's harder to value. And so that's one of the reasons why there are specialized companies like us, because banks don't like to hold these kind of assets because they're concerned about that whole valuation idea.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I've seen that from my accounts. I know that to be true. So let's talk about that. Since you talked about a promissory note, talk about investing in debt and why that could be more lucrative and less stressful than maybe real estate investing. And we'll talk about that next.
Yeah. That's, I could talk, and I've been to 2 or 3 day seminars about that kind of thing, debt investing and stuff. And I do that a lot. I've done that for probably 35 years. But what that is let's just make it easy and say that Curtis sold his house and you're carrying back the financing on that house. You're acting as the bank, and you're getting $1,000 a month. Well, later on down the road, another investment opportunity comes up or something, and you decide that you need a big chunk of money, and you don't need $1,000 a month anymore. So a person like me or someone with a self-directed IRA might come to you and say, okay, Curtis, I'll give you, you're owed, let's say $90,000 at $1,000 a month, and I'm just picking numbers, a 6% interest rate. I'll give you $75,000 cash for that right now, for the right to receive that $1,000 a month. And so that's called a discount from the 90 that you're owed. I'll give you 75. And by getting that discount, the yield that I get is much greater than 6%, than the face rate of 6% that you're getting.
Right.
So yeah, that happens all the time. And here in New Mexico, we have a thing called a real estate contract that a lot of owner financing on real estate is done with. And those trade all the time. I mean, I bought my first real estate contract in 1985. And since then I've bought hundreds, if not thousands of real estate contracts. And then once you buy them, there are a lot of things you can do. The least of which is just hold it and get the return on your money, get a payment every month. So again, there are, I've taken 2 or 3 day seminars on that subject in different places around the country.
Yeah, that's exciting because I have a client and they have they actually did it for private lending, but they have a promissory note for like 52,000. They're getting 8%, so they're getting cash flow a quarter that goes back into their IRA, and they have the note and they're on the deed. So worst case, if they default, they would own a house inside of their IRA. That's worth like 125,000. And so they're investing with, and so because you're still in real estate. So there's two sides of real estate. You can own the land, but you could be the bank. And it's two sides of the same coin. And so it's just a side of, okay, I just like getting cash flow, because folks, you live on cash flow.
I have a quick example of something like that. We have a client that I spoke to years ago that she had some money in her IRA and she wasn't sure what to do with it, but she had this nephew that was flipping houses. And so she started lending money to the nephew to buy the houses and rehab them, and then he'd turn around and sell them and pay back her IRA, and then she'd loan him money again. And each time she loaned him money, she would get a first mortgage on the house, so she was secure. And hopefully, because it was her nephew, he wasn't going to take advantage of her anyway. But it helped her. It helped both of them. I mean, it helped her because she got a better return than she would have got in a bank CD or something. And it helped her nephew because it gave him the cash he needed to buy the next house to flip. So that is a great way to be involved in real estate and not really own real estate necessarily.
And create velocity and keep your money, outpacing inflation and, secured by a real asset. There's so many advantages to that. But to your point, it starts with your educator. You need to know how are you secured? Are they a good operator? What type of work have they done in the past? I mean, you need to do your homework before you put out your hard-earned money.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let's talk about the 5 ways you can invest in real estate using your IRA. Like a lot of people don't want to do that.
Well, we've talked about, obviously you can just buy the real estate directly with your IRA. And, that's a little more detailed than probably we want to go into in this podcast, but you can go to SunWest IRA on YouTube, and I've got several videos about that. So you can own it directly. You can buy real estate. So a lot of times when people say buying real estate, people think about a house, but you could also buy vacant land. And, a lot of people call it freezer land, where you just buy it and throw it in the freezer, and 20 years from now, it might be worth something. I mean, that's something you could do. You could buy debt on the property, like we just talked about, buy existing debt on real estate. You could also, like I talked about, the aunt loaning her nephew money to buy the real estate. That's another way. I think we're maybe on number 4. And then number 5 is you could also buy, you're not limited to just residential real estate. You could buy vacant land. You can buy commercial real estate. You can buy apartments. I mean, all the storage container. I mean, there's just any kind of real estate it's not life insurance and it's not collectibles. So it could be in your IRA.
Let me ask you a question. So I thought about this. I've been asked this. So could you use the self-directed as a down, let's say, and it might be self-dealing, but a down payment? Let's say you're buying a property. You don't want to finance the whole thing, or don't have enough to finance the whole thing, but you have $30,000 for the down payment on a duplex or whatever. And or let's say 25%, whatever that number is.
Yeah.
And you get financing for the rest of that. Can somebody do that?
Okay, you can. So when you first asked the question, you were thinking maybe, can I use my IRA for a down payment to buy a house that I'm going to own personally? And the answer to that is no. But if you have money in your IRA, let's say you have that $30,000 in your IRA, you find a house that's I've heard people on another podcast talk about $70,000 houses. So you find a $70,000 house, your IRA can have debt inside the IRA. And there are lenders around the country that will loan money to IRAs. So just because you only have, say, $30,000 or $40,000 in your IRA doesn't necessarily keep you from buying a piece of real estate, because your IRA can borrow the money. The key there is it has to be what's called non-recourse debt, meaning that the lender, you can't personally guarantee the loan, and the only thing the lender can take if you don't pay them is the property. They can't go back against you personally or the IRA for what's called a deficiency judgment.
Meaning you'll get added to your taxes. They'll say you're 1099 for your shortfall.
Yeah, I'll put that, and they'll also try to get any other assets you have to cover the shortfall, maybe.
Right. So you're saying that this is a really interesting point, because I didn't know you could do this. So this is a good, and I'm sure someone else was thinking this, because I was thinking, so let's say the house is, let's take the $70,000 or $100,000 house. So you put up 25% to secure as a down payment, and then on an investment property, and so now you're getting a loan for $75,000. So I'm a little hazy as to is this from some lender, or somebody is willing to loan the individual or the IRA money? That's why I'm lost there.
Well, okay. First of all, there are lenders, actual banks. If you Google self-directed IRA loans or something like that, you'll find 3 or 4 lenders around the country that will lend money directly to an IRA to purchase real estate. Now, those aren't great loans. Typically, I think they want 40% down, and they're 30-year amortization loans with a 5-year call or something.
Okay.
But they're there. The other option is, we talked about these people who like real estate and want to be involved in real estate, but they don't want to own it. So maybe you're the guy that's got the 40 or 50,000, whatever, in your account, and another guy that's got a few hundred in his account. Maybe his IRA would lend the money to your IRA, and it would potentially be a very secure loan, because they would take the property back, and they might, if they loaned you, say, 70% loan to value or something, then if I'm the lender on that and I have to foreclose, I'm going to get a $100,000 house for $70,000 back in my IRA.
Right. Is the house in the IRA? So you don't get the depreciation and you just get the cash flow. You don't get all the other stuff associated with the real estate.
That's correct. And that's why a lot of people, some people might tell you that buying real estate in the IRA is not a great idea, because you don't get the benefit of the depreciation, the interest deduction, and that kind of stuff. And I would agree with that, but you just have to run the numbers and determine, for one thing, if you don't have the cash anywhere else, and you can't buy it outside the IRA, then that might answer your question for you.
Mm-hmm.
But also, depending on your tax bracket and different variables, it may or may not make sense to own real estate inside your IRA.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I tend to would move people away from that, but if that's your only money, then, what is the best way to make that work? Like I tend to would do like the debts, the life settlements, the, stuff like that, growth and cash flow off of the debt. But, I would tend to, that's why I was hoping you could use part of it for the down payment, but store it outside the IRA, but that's a no. So that's
a no-no. Yeah.
That's a no-no. But you could, again, you could loan money to other people that are trying to do the same thing. And again, you have another secured asset. So,
yeah. So again, you could loan money to if you know someone and you trust them and you've done your due diligence, loan money to people who are flipping houses and, work out some kind of a transaction where you get an interest rate plus a piece of the equity or a piece of the profit, those kinds of things. Those, it can be as creative as two people can be.
I think that's the key thing is as you become more educated, you get creative. And so when you say, well, can I do this with my IRA? From what you said, that's the wrong question. It's like, here's what you can't do. You can't buy insurance. And what was the other one?
Collectibles,
like art and
art, wine, Beanie Babies, those kinds of things.
So you want to get a Subway franchise and you have enough money, you could buy it with your IRA.
Yeah, now you're getting a little too creative, maybe.
Okay,
Chris.
All right. Well, that's why I say you got to reel me back in. So
yeah, you have a thing. You have a thing that's called UBIT, unrelated business income tax.
Okay.
And so if you're running a business in your IRA, then there's going to be some tax consequences. It's not wrong. You can do it and everything. You just have to file a form called a 990T, and you have to pay tax on some or all of the profits. So it takes away the advantages of being in the IRA. So I would say, the best kind of investment within your IRA is some kind of a passive investment that you don't actively work in. There's a very fine line between something being an investing. Like I could buy and fix up and sell a house in my IRA as long as I don't do any of the work. If I buy it and hire people to do the work, pay for them out of my IRA, and then I sell it, I could do that. But if I did that too many times in a year, the IRS might come in and say, no, you're really running a house flipping business. And I don't know what that number is. I don't know if it's 4. I don't know if it's 5. That's something you'd need to talk to your tax professional about and make sure that they agree with you. But I think it's clear you could do 1 or 2 a year as long as everything was done inside the IRA and you didn't do any of the work yourself. That would be perfectly legitimate.
Yeah, I think that. So the key is that you got to get with a team. This is a wonderfully underutilized tool. We're only talking about 3 to 5% of people do it. I think, when we teach, what we call prosperity economics, is our message is to, educate people so that they can take control of their finances. So part of that is I always tell people 2 + 2 is 4. So it's not that complicated, but you do have to be willing to do your due diligence and do your homework. Yeah. And if you're willing to do that, then I think your money with your team, your attorneys, your financial, well, let's say me, just listen to my show, and
that's right.
Your accountant, and because investing is a team sport, and then you identify, like all Buffett does is buys businesses, but they look at things, they analyze them. What do we think this is going to make for us? Is this a good deal? And then they buy it. So you can we can all be many versions of that, and buying cash flow, buying and trying to build financial independence. So because our baby boomers' number one fear is running out of money. So let's focus on cash flow. Terry, you say so.
Well, no, I was just going to say there's your basketball analogy as the team idea. You've got to have you got to have the center, and then the forwards and the guards, and they all do their own little job. And if you don't have them all, then you're not going to be successful. Your team is not going to be successful if you don't have all those parts. And it's important to have all those people that you can rely on and get a hold of and ask the questions and make sure you're doing the right thing.
There is my basketball analogy. All right.
I knew we'd come up with it.
There we go. Consider that stolen. Okay. I got to play this back. And it's like, okay, wait now. All right. So I'm going to work this. I'm going to work that into a talk. So thank you. So so as we conclude, I want to be respectful of your time, because I got a million things rolling around in my head, but why should one, and we might have already answered this, but I want to get your thoughts that we're missing. I was going to say, why should one opt for self-directed IRAs over other IRA options in your mind?
Well, I'm going to be different than most of the custodians that you talk to, in that I think probably a large percentage of people out there don't have any business with a self-directed IRA because they don't want to take the time to educate themselves and learn what they're doing. Mm-hmm. But for those that are willing to get out there and do the work and learn about investing and specialize in something, figure out something that you understand and just do that. And, the thing is you can get much better, you potentially can get much better returns. And the other thing too that I like is I've owned stocks, and I typically tell people, if you want to do well in the stock market, you should follow me around and do the opposite of what I do, because I never make any money. But I have made money buying debt and buying real estate, and it's because I understand it. And the other thing I like about it is I can drive by houses here where I live and say, my IRA owns a part of that house or all of that house. Mm-hmm. And that's difficult to do if you own a share of stock in a company.
Absolutely. I love that. Terry, let's say as we wind down, tell them, and we'll put the links to the show notes for SunWest, but tell them how to get your book or any educational information that you want them to that they should know about self-directors and about SunWest Trust in particular.
Okay. Well, first off, our YouTube channel is SunWest IRA, and like I said, there's probably over 200 videos that I'm sorry, I'm the only talent I could find, and I really have a face for radio, not for video. But they're 5 to 7 minutes long, so you don't have to waste a lot of time. And if you start it and it's not what you want, you can go look at the next one. So that's the first place I'd go. Next, they can go to our website, sunwesttrust.com, and there you'll find an offer for a free book, for my book that I wrote. Mm-hmm. And we can either send you the actual book or you can just download an ebook, either way. And then if anybody has questions and they want to get a hold of me, they can go to the same website, sunwesttrust.com, and go to the Contact Us page and just mention this podcast, send it to me, and it'll get to me that way, and I can answer your question directly.
That sounds great. Listen, I want to thank you. This has been a great talk. I think that not enough people know that this is a tool out there for you, and so I appreciate you coming on and educating our listeners about the self-directed world and clearing up what you can and can't do with it. I think there's I think what you say, every IRA is a self-directed IRA.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've never heard that before, so that's fascinating.
Well, Curtis, thank you for the opportunity, and I think shows like yours are very valuable, and I think people should take the time to listen to them, and if it's something they enjoy or resonates with them, they should implement some stuff and start taking control of their own retirement.
Absolutely. And, y'all can always, I want you to download our ebook on the site, Financial Planning Has Failed. And so where we educate people in the book on some of the alternative investment strategies that we teach in prosperity economics. And then if you're educating yourself about the vehicle, we can definitely, connect you. I can definitely connect you with SunWest and help you set those up. So that's a good thing. So listen, with that, Terry, I want to thank you again. Guys, take some notes. I think this was a wonderful episode, and I want to thank Terry White for coming on, talking to us about self-directed IRAs. Go out there, guys, and be prosperous. And if you like this show, share it. Don't keep us a secret. Listen, like, and share. Leave us a comment And we thank you again for another fantastic episode of the Practical Wealth Show. Terry, thanks a lot again.
Thank you, Curtis.
Thanks for listening to Practical Wealth. To access the show notes and resources, go to practicalwealthshow.com. To get your questions on the show, go to practicalwealthshow.com. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before you make any investment decisions, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Practical Wealth. Written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.